Morning, everybody. So I'm going to start with a couple of announcements. The United States Conference Board and Processor Advisory Board members are going to be meeting with the U.S. Commissioners and Head of Delegation at 10:30 this morning in the Conference Board room. So I don't know whether Canadian Conference Board and PAB members want to caucus at the same time, but that should just be a brief discussion scheduled for about half an hour. Secondly, commissioners were reflecting on yesterday's presentation on the FIS design evaluation for 2026 under agenda item 8.1. And we've decided to add three options that are discussed on slide 16 of the slides accompanying paper 13. So those are options 4, 5, and 6 that would be added to the 2026 FIS. So that includes modifications for Area 3A to with the aim of reducing bias there, and modifications in 2B around Goose Island. And our intent would be to have the Secretariat cover the expected losses out of the reserves, and that those expected losses, the Secretariat estimated at $166,000 for the 3A modifications and $106,000 for the 2B modification. So thought it would be appropriate to announce that now before the session this evening for prospective bidders on the 2026 FIS request for tenders process. And that is, I think, at 5 o'clock this evening. Yeah, right after the Conference Board and PAB are done this evening. That's all I had by way of announcements. Dr. Wilson, anything from you? No. Okay. If not, we have just a short agenda item this morning to talk about the contracting party reports. Folks will recall that we decided to set this up as basically just a Q&A session, and Canada is up first. Gwen, did you have anything you want to say to kick us off?
Yeah, I can just do a brief introduction.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gwen Mason. I am the Halibut Coordinator with the Groundfish Management Unit with DFO, and I am here to answer any questions that folks may have on the Canadian Contracting Party report. I do also have Trevor Ruel in the room here. He's able to speak to any enforcement questions. And we also have Mike Turner and Kevin Romanen available online for if there are any questions on the Province of BC report. I do have a couple of quick summary bullets if folks would like a very high level summary of the report, but I'm also happy just to jump right into questions and answers.
Commissioners, you want to hear a quick summary? Sure, go on.
Okay, it's like 5 bullets. Will be
all
fast.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so in the commercial world for 2025, the TAC was 3,964,750 net pounds. This reflects an 85% split. 85% goes to the commercial sector and 15% goes to the recreational sector. The 2025 commercial catch as of December 17th, which is when the report was submitted, was sitting at 3,844,208 pounds. And this includes discard mortality as well. For the recreational TAC, it was 680,250 net pounds. This reflects a 15% split. However, folks may recall that there was an overage in the recreational sector in 2024, and this was of 28,440 net pounds. The Canadian recreational fishery does have an overage provision. Any overage that is incurred in one season is carried forward to the following season and is deducted from that season's TAC. So the resulting fishable recreational TAC was 651,810 net pounds. And the catch was near 508,000 net pounds, representing a 77.9% catch. Recreational management measures for 2025 included a max length of 102 centimeters head-on, or just over 40 inches, a daily limit of 1 fish per day, and an annual limit of 10 fish. Notable management updates that took place in Canada this past year includes one that was mentioned by Basha yesterday, collaboration between DFO, IPHC, and Archipelago Marine Research, which is the groundfish third-party monitoring service provider, to obtain all of the missing Canadian logbook data from the 2024 season. And this resulted in 100% of logbook records being available to the IPHC for the 2024 season. Currently working with both IPHC and Archipelago to set up obtaining the 2025 logbooks and historical data from prior years. Also, this past year, we were able to have a 3-year permission renewed with the Archipelago Management Board to permit the fizz sampling to continue to occur in multiple use zones in the Guayhanas National Marine Conservation Area. So this will be in place through 2027. There's also been continued engagement on the West Coast Commercial Fisheries Modernization File, and this involves reforms in licensing and management of Canada's West Coast commercial fishing industry. There was also a rollout of a pilot project to improve the accounting of lice, predated, or damaged fish in the commercial hook and line fisheries, a rollover of an expanded 800-line closure, which is primarily in place to protect spawning aggregations of arrowtooth flounder, but it also overlaps with a spawning area of Pacific halibut as well. And lastly, the XRQ program, or the Experimental Recreational Halibut Program, which is an offshoot of the recreational fishery, was postponed for 2025, and we are currently determining whether or not it will be able to run this current year. And that's it for my summary.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Mason. Any questions on that for starters? Or other questions on the Canadian Contracting Party report? Well, I have a couple, Ms. Mason. One is actually on the last point you brought up about the XRQ program. Is there anything you can say in sort of summary fashion about why the program is postponed?
Yeah, I can speak to it. So it was closed for the past 2025 season. DFO, like all other Canadian government departments, we're currently reviewing our programming and having to make sure that we can align our resources to be able to meet urgent needs while we're waiting for longer term decisions pending the outcome of the fall budget and expenditure review exercises. So a decision for the 2026 fishery hasn't been made yet, but it's going to be reviewed, and messaging about it will be going out before April 1st in 2026. But it was essentially very capacity limited this past year, and we just weren't able to run it. We're having issues with some of the technology that is used to run it as well. So unfortunately, we weren't able to open it.
Okay, so not a permanent decision.
No, it was just for last year.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And then on a different topic, on page 2 of the Contracting Party report, the Commercial Fisheries Overview notes that in addition to the halibut, CTAC, the Canadian Total Allowable Catch, a carryover of quota from previous seasons is allocated to some licenses. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to what's the order of magnitude of the carryover, and is it a common practice?
Yep. So yeah, in the Canadian commercial groundfish fisheries, including the halibut fishery, there are underage and overage provisions. Underage it varies by species depending on which license. For halibut specifically, you can roll over up to 30% of your uncaught quota. So if you have uncaught quota remaining on your license, that can be put forward. Apologies. It can be rolled over to your next year's license as well. But if you have unfished quota in excess of that 30% maximum, some would swim. It wouldn't. All of it wouldn't roll over to the next year.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Yamada. Oh, sorry, Commissioner DeGrief.
Mm. Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner DeGrief.
So what is that distinction? The 10%
Sorry,
versus the 30%?
I misspoke. I said it was 30% underage. It's actually 10% underage.
10%. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Yamato?
So in your recreational fishery, you said they had an overage this year.
Yeah.
So obviously you did have that 3 fish
Mhm.
provision, right, in place. So you did have to obviously use it. So how often, do you have any rationale for why they went over?
So yes, and there hasn't been an overage in this past 2025 season, but there was one in 2024. Yes, the 3 per day flexibility was in place for these years. It was not utilized. Prior to each season, the Sport Fish Advisory Board and DFO meet, do a bunch of forecasting, looking at different size options and bag limits. There is a domestic flexibility of 1 or 2. And they forecast out like what they would what they're anticipating to catch in the summer months based on previous year's data and looking at results of the stock assessment from here. And so in 2024, it was just the forecasting wasn't correct, and there was much higher catch in the summer months than was originally anticipated. So I believe that the SFAB and DFO meet monthly within the season to review the previous month's data and make decisions going forward. So when that working group realized that there was likely to hit their TAC and go over, a decision was made to close the fishery early last year. So it closed, I believe, late September last year.
Just a follow-up question. So do you know that overage was due to more anglers fishing or the fish were bigger?
I believe it was the former. Yeah, I'll take a look at the data, but I believe it was just more effort than what was originally anticipated, not necessarily due to larger fish.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Guess not. Thank you, Ms. Mason.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that brings us to the U.S. contracting party report. Mr. Duncan.
Hey, good morning, commissioners and everyone here at the IPHC meeting. For the record, my name is Doug Duncan. I am with NOAA Fisheries in the Alaska region, and I am stepping into this role for the first year after the departure of Kurt Iverson this year, who I think most of you, or everyone here misses very much. But with that being said, here to answer any questions on the U.S. contracting party report.
Thank you for being brave. Commissioner Davis.
Hi, Doug. Nice to meet you or see you again. And I'm sure in a few years you'll be missed as much as Kurt if he were to go away. So
no chance.
I had a couple questions. There was a section in the report, I was trying to find the page again, where it referenced improvements in recreational catch monitoring in Alaska. And it cited a number of objectives. But I didn't get a sense of what actual changes were sort of underway or planned to make those improvements to the recreational catch monitoring. So I wondered if you could expand on what was described there in terms of, okay, you've got these objectives to find deficiencies, improve the timeliness of reporting, but what's actually happening? Like, do you have a sense of the plans for achieving those objectives?
Hey, thank you very much for that question. I assume you might be referring to the discussion on page 16 in regards to the Marine Recreational Information Program.
Yep, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, maybe a little bit of a look back. I think a lot of these efforts are currently underway. So it's not something that I have a specific update on right now, but I guess maybe one of the things that I guess could be helpful to think about is there is some additional discussion in the recreational fisheries section. I believe on page 14 of the report, which discusses some actual or some, guess maybe some more concrete work that Fish and Game is undertaking to improve its recreational fisheries data collection. And I think that some of this, at least some of this work, is an outgrowth of that earlier work through the MRIP program. And so I guess that is, I think, the extent of the information that I have, but I believe that Adam St. Savior from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game may be able to provide you with some additional specifics if that's helpful.
That's great. Is he here? Or?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Adam St. Savior for the record, Fish and Game, Alaska Department of Fish and Game. So yeah, I got an update from our statewide harvest survey program folks, just to deliver to you all. That goes kind of beyond what's in the report. Last year, we secured funding to dedicate staff time toward working on statewide harvest survey modernization. Our biometric staff is currently working through the new sampling design. We will engage with NOAA MRIP staff to review the new study design. We're working with our licensing staff to improve collection of email and phone number contact information from participants to facilitate the electronic survey. Completion of an online survey tool is expected February 2027. We will begin testing the tool both internally and externally at that time. Our programmers need to build several front and back end programs to handle survey participation selection, notification, reminders, and tracking. And we're aiming for a full public rollout in 2028. And I can answer any other parts related to the, our portion of the national report if you'd like.
Thank you for that. So do I understand then that the change is to transition from a paper-based survey to an electronic survey?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes planned? Or is that sort of the driver?
I think that's the primary driver, is to reduce recall bias and whatnot. I think there are some structural changes planned in terms of like how they're selecting participants. I don't have all the details on that though. I think they're still kind of hammering some of that out.
So the recall bias would be addressed through sort of surveys on a more regular basis?
Yeah, I think the intent is for them to be able to basically fill out the information either on site or directly after
I
leaving
see.
the fishing grounds.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not on this topic.
Okay, something else on
you
the
have-
report?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure, Adam, if you're the right person for this, but I did have a few questions about the non-directed fisheries section of the report in Alaska. I read on page 21 about the electronic monitoring sort of pilots or tests that have been done over the last number of years. And I wondered if you could expand on those in terms of what's the plan for their implementation, or are they becoming a requirement in those trawl partial coverage categories? And if so, at what levels of coverage, et cetera. So yeah, I got the sense the pilots had been done. You'd learned some things, but I wasn't clear on sort of what was happening now.
Sure, through the chair, Mr. Davis. Yeah, I think the Trawlium pilot program had been ongoing for some years. It was fully implemented as a regulatory program in 2025. I think that it was a pretty direct shift from the pilot program to the regulated program. So not a lot of differences. It is something that has been, I think, highly successful for us in increasing in adoption year over year, more vessels entering that electronic monitoring program. And I think that through some of the efficiencies realized through that approach to monitoring relative to human observers, we've been able to have some expansions in coverage as a result. So maybe that's the high level overview, and if you've got some more specifics, I can try and dig into them.
Maybe you could just help me understand a bit about, I mean, is this for all trawl fisheries in the Gulf of Alaska? And what levels of coverage are we talking about?
Through the chair, I think this is focused on pelagic trawl fisheries in the Gulf of Alaska. And for levels of coverage, I do not know that off the top of my head. I want to say maybe 50 to 60%, but for not counting other monitoring coverages, but just in the EM sphere. But maybe see if anybody else has any information on that.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then are there plans for like non-pelagic trawl, like bottom contact trawl fisheries that would be sort of similar to this, or?
I think that is the long-term goal of this. I think there's been gradual tests to see how well it works in a non-pelagic scenario, just given that it's a non-pelagic year. Sometimes you have a situation on deck that is, I guess, more cluttered to observe via camera. So I think that is as the program for pelagic trawl has gotten kind of more refined and implemented. I think that's the long-term intent, is that this be a tool that can be expanded further to non-pelagic trawl. I don't think there is a definite timeline for that at this point in time, though.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Allerson.
Yeah, to answer that, as I understand it, this pelagic fishery is now 100% covered with EM. That was my understanding coming out of the December council meeting, North Pacific Council meeting.
I think you may be right. I am hoping that I reached out to maybe get a more definite answer on that, and we'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner DeGreef.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Duncan. Last year, after the national reports, Keith forwarded me your IFQ program review. And one of the topics in there was related to societal loss of restrictions on licenses. And Canada is undergoing a modernization, look at modernization for our licenses. And one of the considerations is owner-operator. And so I was just wondering, one of the statements in the report or review was that restrictions are reducing resource rent in halibut by 25%. And so what I was trying to wonder is, are some of the efficiency losses we're seeing, that they're talking about, is part of that structurally with owner-operator? So is that why some of the areas are having trouble getting their allocation, in that they can't make it transferable to somebody else to go fish, or for them to like kind of double up, or and are there any of those provisions in your owner-operator restrictions? Sorry if that's a long-winded and confusing question, but I hope you get what I was trying to get to there.
Thanks. I'll through the chair, Commissioner DeGreef, I'll try and give it a shot. Yeah, I think it really depends by regulatory area what the barriers are to harvesting quota shares. There's certainly various owner on board restrictions and exemptions in the regulations for our halibut and sablefish IFQ programs. I guess, and maybe it's good to make a distinction between, I guess, situations where an operator is wanting to I guess lease their quota without then being on the harvesting vessel versus their ability to walk onto a vessel that is not theirs and work to harvest their quota. And the latter is widely available. The former is there are more restrictions. I think specifically there's medical exemptions, and then there are exemptions for initial issuees, so people who originally received the quota. But over time, that's something that has been gradually phased out.
Okay, I guess my question is, yeah, it's probably a contributing factor is that, in Canada, we seem to be getting fairly close to catching our allocation, and that's usually somebody doesn't, they're fully transferable. So it's easier, whereas it looks like in some of the areas in Alaska, harder to catch all their allocation. And so I was just wondering if there was any thoughts or ties to these restrictions on licenses. That's why there's a tougher time catching that allocation. So
Yeah, I think there definitely can be in specific situations. Obviously, it's a balance between, right, I think that the council's management to incentivize an owner on board fishery versus providing maximum flexibility.
yeah, I appreciate that. That's definitely a consideration, I think, within our own modernization as well. My other question is regards to 2A. So I don't know did you want to go for it, try it first, or?
Hit me with it, and then I'll see if I can find the right person in the audience for it.
Oh, okay. I just noticed in the report that the tribal fishery had a number of openings, and I noted that their CPUE was quite a bit higher. And I noticed at the end, there was an opening, during the season, there was some openings that were around 500-pound caps, and they were relatively short, a few days. By the end of the season, it was open August 11th to December 7th with a 5,000-pound limit. And I was just curious if that's like regular, is this out of the norm?
The details I'll have to, the tribes are actually in another meeting right now. This is the only time they could get together, but it was a little unusual this year. So I can confirm that. So that particularly towards the end of the season.
Okay. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the U.S. contracting party report? Okay. I think that covers it. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. So we do have a public comment and question opportunity. Don't all jump at once, but if anyone would like to make a comment or ask a question, now's your opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have 3 who have signed up. So if we could just have that presentation brought up on the screen, we can step through those as well, please. Maybe just to preempt it. The first, I believe, is Robert Hawkness. Or actually, Robert, if you hold tight, sorry. First is Clay Duda on proposal B1. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Clay Duda. I'm a charter boat owner and operator in Homer, Area 3A. Also a board member with the Homer Charter Association. If it's appropriate, I'd like to offer a brief statement on behalf of the Homer Charter Association, and maybe my own personal comments too. The Homer Charter Association is strongly in favor for status quo regulations for Area 3A for this coming year. I think recent survey data supports that. And beyond that, I know you guys do, but please consider the socioeconomic data or information when considering these things. For a community like Homer, we're at the end of the road system. We're about 4 hours south of Anchorage. We don't have a strong ecotourism base, or really there is some, but it's not anything like Seward. Access to the halibut resource is a major economic driver for when people consider to visit our town or not. It is a key part of their decision to make that 4-hour drive from Anchorage. We've lost most of our air travel. There's one company that flies once a day in and out of Homer. So it's, there's a little bit of a barrier for people getting to us. So, and we know that the halibut resource is a major driver. So I think that's, so just please consider that. Further reductions from where we sit would have a huge impact on just not our fishery and our businesses, but our entire town. I think that's kind of the end of my Homer Charter Association hat. I mean, for me personally too, I mean, I've been fishing in and out of Homer for, this will be my 10th year, if we get to fish this summer, which I'm pretty hopeful about. I chose to buy in about a year and a half ago, bought my own boat and charter halibut permit. I've been coming to these meetings since at least 2019, not every year, but usually try to get to the North Council and these and stay informed. So really appreciated the conservation efforts that the council or the commission has taken over time. Myself, and I can't put words in other people's mouth, but generally our charter fleet's very conservation minded. We all appreciate the resource and respect the resource and hope to do this for, as long as possible. So that was a big decision in my mind when I finally just decided to, spend the money and buy into the fishery. Like I said, I appreciate the conservation efforts and believe from my experience it'll be managed in a sustainable way to hopefully, keep us all being able to make our livings off of it. I think those are my main points. I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything.
Okay, thanks very much for your comments. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Alverson.
So just so I understand how your charter association might be constructed, do they operate, or you yourself and them operate with a federal limited entry charter boat permit and have I call it a hired master that runs the boat for the fares that you take out? Is that how you operate and design?
Generally, yes, you have to have a limited entry charter halibut permit to fish for halibut, charter fish for halibut. There is a huge diversity in our business models. So I'm probably the most basic, simple one. I own my own boat. I captain it. So I'm a owner operator. There are companies, we've seen some consolidation, but we're still vast majority of mom and pop fishery or fleet. It's the largest charter fleet in the state of Alaska that we represent. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Where I was trying to get to it, we're seeing in 2C where you have these bareboat charter and you don't have a captain.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So that's the nuance that I'm kind of looking for from your group.
There are a few of the rental boats in 3A, and I don't know, I'm not intimately familiar with every port. I think there might be 6 in Homer, five that I know of. I know there's a few out of Seward. It's nothing like what's happening in 2C. And I think that's simply because of the logistics of getting to our fishing grounds. Speaking about Homer, like we're pretty unprotected waters. It's open water. The rental boats that I know about, they require that people take a boater safety course and they have to stay within Ketchimek Bay, which is about an 18-mile range, which really isn't to our best fishing grounds. There are halibut there, depending on the time of year, but as charter fishermen, we're usually going further than that too.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't miss a point.
Oh, that's all right. Go
I
ahead.
don't have my notes either.
Yeah.
Something that I think is worth mentioning too, I don't know how down in the weeds you guys have gotten about the charter management measures that come out of the North Pacific Fishery Management Council every year, but looking at 3A, we're for the vast majority of our business models, we really have our back against the wall. Worst case scenario, if we take a really substantial cut, we would start losing shoulder seasons. We're already limited to fishing 5 days per week. The most extreme from those management measures, we'd basically be fishing June 1 through September 1. And that's with 2 days a week closed for fishing also. So that's 5 days a week for what is that, 3-month season. And it's scary, not only for me, like thinking about trying to make payments to the bank, but also for, the trickle down effects for the rest of our, our town. I mean, if there's not a reason for people to come, like that's going to drastically, impact far beyond us.
Thank you. I think we're good. Thanks for your comments.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And then we have Robert Hawkness on proposal C2.
All right, thank you, commissioners, for allowing me the time to speak. Just before I start speaking about my proposal, I'd like to make a couple quick comments about the economic importance of the commercial halibut fishery in Canada. With the decline in salmon and herring fisheries, the commercial halibut fishery is now very important to many small boat fleet in Canada. It is now the backbone of many family-owned fishing businesses. It generates important jobs and incomes in coastal communities up and down the coast, and is also growing in importance in many First Nations communities, as First Nation organizations account for almost 1/3 of the commercial fishery TAC. The fishery is important, and while we always need to take conservation into account, any reductions in catch limits can have significant socioeconomic consequences. And so I know for myself personally, halibut now generates around 55% of my family's income. My brother fishes on my boat, and I'm hoping that my niece and nephew can come out. They came out this summer with us for salmon, and hopefully they can come out for halibut when they're a little bit older. But yeah, it's important to our family. And then on to my proposal. Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to consider my regulatory proposal for a 3-year pilot to allow for limited retention of legal size halibut caught incidentally during the closed period, i.e. early December to early March, in existing year-round hook and line and trap fisheries, targeting other groundfish species, not halibut, in Canadian waters, IPHC regulatory area 2B. There are multiple reasons why I'm bringing this regulatory proposal forward, and I'd like to use this opportunity to highlight a few of them. First, I'd like to highlight, based on the findings of the IPHC Secretariat, that there is no conservation or biological risk associated with this regulatory proposal. In 2020, the IPHC Secretariat staff prepared a paper on this, and in 2025, the IPHC Secretariat staff prepared information paper Info 4, both of which concluded that there is no biological or conservation impediment to retaining halibut during the closed period. As per Canadian groundfish conditions of license, hook and line and trap groundfish vessels must acquire sufficient individual vessel quota of halibut to cover the fishing mortality associated with any catch of halibut. This requirement creates the incentive for vessels to fish responsibly and minimizes their incidental catch of halibut. However, during the closed period, it's also imposing a penalty on these vessels, as they must incur a cost, but also must release those halibut. This is creating hardship, particularly for the smaller fishing operations targeting rockfish. The reason that I'm proposing this, a maximum of 2% of the commercial TAC, if available after the closure of the directed fishery, is for the purpose for this proposal is that given that what we have seen in our fisheries, it becomes very hard to ensure availability amongst the different fleets and fishing vessels with an extremely small amount of quota. The proposed maximum 2% of the TAC will give Canada the flexibility to be able to retain legal size halibut that may be caught as harvesters prosecute their directed fisheries, but still making sure that halibut that is being caught remains non-directed and non-targeted. The level of discards reviewed in the IPHC 2025 info paper were only over a 3-year period from 2022 to 2024. It may be more appropriate to consider looking at longer time frame to more accurately reflect the past participation in the non-halibut hook and line and trap fisheries during the closed period. Several management measures would be applied to ensure that this pilot would not exceed the proposed maximum 2% of the Canadian halibut TAC and make sure that the catch of halibut remains incidental. One management measure would be applied is a trip limit. This would limit the amount of halibut that could be landed by a vessel for each trip. While the amounts for the trip limit will still need to be discussed between the commercial sector and DFO, it could be somewhere between 500 and 1,000 pounds per trip. For example, retaining just 25 halibut on a trip at a 21-pound average weight would total 525 pounds. This is not very much poundage if you happen to accidentally run into halibut while targeting other groundfish species. The purpose of this proposal is to maintain the management measures in place that create the incentive for non-halibut hook and line and trap groundfish vessels to fish responsibly and minimize their incidental catch of legal-size halibut, while giving them the ability to avoid or minimize the penalties provided that they conduct their fishing operations in a responsible manner. The proposal should also help minimize discard mortality and wastage of legal-size halibut. A 3-year pilot program will allow for a full evaluation of the trial, with analysis and review being conducted both in season and postseason each year. If the evaluation indicates that the pilot is not performing as intended, it would be modified to address the identified concerns or halted. The commercial sector and DFO will work collaboratively through the pilot to ensure to evaluate and make sure any changes are required. All of Canada's Pacific groundfish fisheries have 100% independent at sea and 100% dockside monitoring requirements, as well as several additional management measures in the form of caps to ensure the sustainable and equitable harvest of each stock. These measures include sector-specific caps, area-specific caps, landing caps, vessel caps, and trip limits. These cap limits the amount of quota that can be transferred between fishing sectors, the amount of quota that can be permanently or temporarily held by a license, the amount of non-directed catch that can be retained landed in directed fisheries, and the amount of catch that can be landed on a given species for each trip. As you can see, Canada has many ways to make sure that this pilot remains what is being proposed. Limited incidental catch retaining during the closed period in existing year-round hook and line and trap commercial fisheries, targeting other groundfish species, not halibut. The purpose of this proposal is to continue encouraging responsible and sustainable fishing practices without participants being penalized for being responsible. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Hockness, for your comments and your proposal. Questions? Commissioner Alderson.
Dropped off your name.
It's Robert Hockness.
Mr. Harkness. There's a number of, I'm assuming your hook and line operation, and are you black cutting or rockfish targeting? And how long does a typical trip you make last?
We're licensed for halibut, sablefish, and rockfish. We have all three different, actually we'll have all 5 groundfish species licenses that you can hook and line fish. But for rockfish, rockfish is typically about a week for fresh. Sablefish for us is anywhere from 3 weeks to a month, depending on how fishing is. And again, for halibut, it's about a week for fresh.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Hockness, I had a question for you. So you mentioned a number of different possibilities of management measures that could be applied by DFO to put some parameters around this. And, you know, of course, all those details are not firmed up at this stage, at least is my understanding. So how would you respond to those who would ask, well, given the opportunity for putting fresh halibut on the market at a time of year when it is not otherwise available, doesn't that create an incentive for fishermen to then try to maximize their allowable harvest during this time frame? How would you respond to that general concern?
Well, given that it's with the amount of quota that's being proposed, which is 2%, it works out to approximately 150 basically trips, and that has to be split amongst 3 months and between the 2 different fleets, between sablefish and rockfish. So you're looking at about 50 trips a month at a 500-pound limit. I was talking to some buyers and they said it's not going to distort or increase the prices, that small amount of fish that's hitting the market. I mean, obviously, if 150 boats all went out and they all came in, well, that's could obviously affect the market, but economically, 500 pounds is not going to do anything other than cover the cost that is associated with acquiring the quota.
Okay, thank you. And as a follow-up to that, sure how best to frame this. If well, maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Degree.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Robert, and thanks for getting into great detail into your report. I know our integrated groundfish management system is complicated and there's lots of nuances and everything, but I think the idea of the 500-pound trip limit really kind of makes everyone understand what we're talking about in scope. I just was going to ask you about the sablefish fishery. Of course, I fish sablefish as well. So I kind of already know the answer, but the majority of the boats that are fishing sablefish are frozen. And so they're not going to be delivering into any fresh market. They're just going to be delivering into the frozen market. And so I'm trying to think in my head what proportion would be frozen versus fresh, but maybe I'll see what your thoughts are.
Sorry, just give me 1 minute. It's probably not going to be very much. There's only about 10 to 12 sablefish vessels that usually hail out in the winter. Those are mostly trap, just given the fact that you're not encountering halibut as much with traps as you are with hook and line. So yeah, it's not going to be much. And again, it may encourage some hook and line sablefish boats to go out there because again, it's like personally, like when I went out and did my very first rockfish trip that I've ever done, I thought I was setting on where I should be getting some rockfish, and I ran into 2,000 pounds of rockfish and 2,000 pounds of halibut, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do here now? And like this is just a way to make sure that you're not penalized for trying to be responsible. Like 500 pounds, if you have to lease the fish, is about $3,000, which lets you catch, well, your 500 pounds probably and another 2,000 pounds that you'd be allowed to discard over the side. So it doesn't sound like a lot of fish, and it's not a lot of fish, but that $3,000 is profit that's coming out of like everybody's paycheck. And with the rising price of bait and the rising price of fuel, the rising price of groceries, the rising price of everything, it's meaningful money that's coming out of people's pockets. And so when there's no biological or conservation concern, and I really don't see the incentive if you want it to be a bycatch fishery or an incidental catch, and that's what's being proposed, is I don't see the harm in trying to allow people to make a living.
Thank you. Any final questions? Commissioner Alverson.
So one concern with these types of fisheries that I've seen out of the Pacific Council, Washington, Oregon, California, is the high valued fish like halibut becomes a targeted bycatch. So I guess, how do we want a sense that you're not going to catch the 500 pounds on the first 2 days and then continue to release, over that, which creates a release mortality. So I guess your answer would be the incentive not to do that is you'd be charged for those based on your observer program.
Yes, based on our observer program, because we are 100% monitored electronically, it monitors every fish that comes aboard, and you have to be accountable to that because 10% of your trip is audited by a third party. So they can, and it's randomized, so you don't know which set you put in your logbook that's going to be checked. So you have to be accurate, and so you don't want to be you don't want to be catching halibut, but we all know if you've ever commercially fished is sometimes there's fish there where you're not expecting fish. And we're not trying to target it. And if the commissioners decide that you authorize this program and all of a sudden it looks like there's guys that are doing stuff that it's not designed for. This is not, I want it to be halted. I don't want it to be abused. I want people to be fishing responsibly. And when I was brought up, it was if you catch something and there's a market for it and it's dead, you should keep it. And if it's going to impose a financial penalty for being responsible, I don't think that's fair personally, but that's, if you think that it's not something that you want to broach, that's fine. But I want to keep raising this point because there's been 2 papers now that say that there's no biological or conservation risk to having a limited amount of fish being retained.
One last question. So on status quo, you have to go back and buy or the fish that you,
So
and you said, I heard the number $3,000 or something that might cost?
well, so if you, it's roughly about $6 a pound to lease, and you're getting, we were getting about $5.50, $6
So
total on top of what the cost was this year. Like the prices were really good.
So when you settle up with your crew and yourself on that, does that come off as a gross stock expense so that the boat and the crew proportionally pay that fee?
Yeah. All the expenses come off the top. I don't know about everybody else, but I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
But for our settlement, the boat takes 35% after the expenses, and the rest gets divvied up amongst the crew. And that would be considered a cost. So you have monitoring costs that come off, fuel, grub, and then any lease fish that is needed to cover what catches we've caught.
I understand. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Mr. Hockness, for taking the time to talk to us about it.
Well, thank you very much for letting me speak. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. We have 2 public comments online. The first is from Adrian Swan, and it is including this written comment, which may be a little bit hard to see. So, Chair, we'll pass the microphone to Adrian, who's online.
Can you guys hear me fine?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just gonna pretty much just read what I wrote in my comment. So, my name is Adrienne Swan, and my boyfriend and I have been working for Rum Runner Charters in Juneau, Area 2C of Southeast Alaska for nearly 10 years now, and will soon own it in the upcoming months. I admit, with all that is going on with halibut regulations nowadays, always changing and continually getting more restrictive, I am a little nervous about buying into this industry. We enjoy the work so much, and initially the opportunity was a dream come true for us, but if regulations continue becoming more and more restrictive, soon I think it will be hard advertising halibut fishing to anyone. We have already seen the negative effects that only being allowed one recurrently smaller and smaller halibut has on past and potential customers. Halibut is more than often their high priority fish. Ones that come to Southeast Alaska for the first time are often bummed that they learn when they learn that they can't keep a larger fish, which doesn't set a good mood on the charter from the get-go. And we've lost customers when booking to other areas or unguided charters because they are able to keep at least one halibut of any size. I strongly advocate for at least maintaining the status quo regulations in Area 2C of under 37, over 80, with 1 day per week closure, which does, I believe, require a regional harvest increase. I truly believe we cannot go lower than status quo, though, without harming Southeast Alaska's guided sport fish industry detrimentally. The volatility of the regulations does not help either. Customers, especially returning ones, never know what to expect the next year and whether or not they will lose a day of fishing due to recent changing day closures, which makes them more reluctant to book again. From what I had seen of the IPHC science on stock status, biological targets are being met and exceeded, but I feel like we're being continually restricted as if we are approaching critical overfishing times, which is just not the case. Additionally, the recent boom of unguided charters, especially in Southeast, has hurt the guided sports sector in terms of halibut. Because they are not managed and the fleet is growing at an alarming rate, and their halibut harvests get taken off the top, and we are just allocated with the remainder, which is another reason why I advocate for raising the coast. The economic impact that the sport guided charter fishery offers should be taken into consideration too. In Southeast Alaska alone, the guided sport fishing industry created nearly 2,000 jobs, $65 million in labor income, and $271 million in spending income in 2024, which was the most recent economic impact that I found of our industry. The viability of the sport fishing industry cannot afford more cuts for my aforementioned reasons. And thank you for allowing me to comment today.
Thank you, Ms. Swan, for sharing your comments with us. Commissioners, any questions? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And the last to sign up is Grantley Moore, who's online. So over to you, Grantley. I can see you have a mic, but it doesn't look to be activated. Grantley, can you hear us?
Hello, I can hear you.
Fantastic. We can hear you too. Go ahead.
Okay, there you go. Very good. Thank you so much for letting us comment on this. I have a charter company here in Juneau as well. I am here to support and agree with what Adrian Swan was just saying as well. I have anywhere from May through September, anywhere from 19 to 22 or so, or sometimes 25, depending on some part-time people. Employees for 5 months each summer. And for my charter business, I have 8 boats here, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. But with all these new regulations, the last few years, and any potential even more restrictive ones, is the prices going up. The people wanting to book are so many of them are refusing, even the last few years, to book because they can go other places, area 3A, but we're in the 2C area here in Juneau, of course. And I just see that it's any more restrictions, it's just hurting us worse and worse and worse. For example, like last year, we were only allowed to do one trip, one on one CHP and one boat. Well, in the past years, I'm hoping this year we can still do it again, do like 2 or 3 4-hour trips, I'm hoping. Because if I can only do one trip for one boat, one permit, last year, 66% cut right there immediately. And I was calculating out I'd have to buy more boats, buy more permits, and they're almost $200,000 permits, and then a boat is 100,000 plus or minus depending what you get, or even 200, or depending what you get, and the cost was just not doable at all. So anyway, another thing too was I have a majority, which is actually surprising. In the past years and way back, it used to be a lot of out of town employees, but the last few years has been fantastic. Where I have 7 of my 8 captains are local Juneau residents, which is fantastic to have. And then lots and lots of deckhands are local residents as well, and drivers, the van drivers and things like that. It's been fantastic to have that. And they're all making, they live here, they have a place, they have a home vehicle typically, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really nice to have, and the local experience and local knowledge as well. And I just don't want to have to cut back on employees and cut back with more restrictive regulations. It is going to cut back on, prices will go up, and then there'll be less bookings, and therefore there'll be less work. So that's why it'd have to be cut back. I might even have to sell boats after a while at some point if it gets too bad. But anyway, just wanted to let you know all those things, and I appreciate you letting us comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We do have one more who's just signed up, so please come on up, Garrett.
There's that red light. Morning, Commissioners. Chair, thanks for the opportunity. Sorry, I got a little confused with the schedule and we're doing our conference board thing. My name's Garrett Elwood, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. My group is Next Generation Fishermen's Organization, and then I'm representing 9 second-generation fishermen, so we all bought our quota in areas 3B and 4A. I've been attending these meetings for 20 years. I was recently asked to, or I recently volunteered to join the MSAB, which has been a great experience, and I've been commercial fishing halibut and blackcod for 26 years. I wanted to think about over the evening and kind of respond from the perspective of a Western halibut user to some of the comments regarding the 2C charters perspective on the current economic challenges that they're facing. Despite being close to 1,000 miles away from 2C and Region 2 out in 3B and 4A, we're still feeling the impacts of the socioeconomic considerations that have been so important to the commissioners in their decision-making process over the last decade. The current halibut allocation system provides, my understanding, it provides access to anglers through charter licenses. It's not supplying participants with the fish that they need to sustain their business models. And this isn't really any different than what we're facing. The situation is not unique to the charter sector and reflects the broader challenges across the industries and sectors. Our business models have been evolving for the last 5, 10, 20 years. And I don't discount those arguments or the pain from that those users are experiencing, but really have a hard time grappling with the information that if there anyone who's invested in a charter business or a commercial IFQ purchase in the last 5 or 10 years, the information they've been getting, because I mean the idea that this could stay status quo indefinitely is just really troubling when you're trying to manage a long-lived species sustainably. I feel like there's some details that are being omitted from those arguments, such as the upper end of the reverse slot limit, and that there's still opportunity to utilize GAF up to the 10%. That is, intended to be kind of a buffer during these difficult times without kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. So I just wanted to kind of take an opportunity to address those, and then I'll try to keep the rest of my comments brief, but I just wanted to kind of highlight a real concern that I have regarding the consistent use of kind of discretionary allocation in the decision-making process annually. And we're not really looking at, we're not even presenting, biological distribution by area, kind of show it regionally. And I'm concerned about the estimates of the fishing mortality in the West, in Region 4, and where we have better data in Region 2. It's at kind of unprecedented levels. For every, the way I understand it, for every 10 recruits that go from being 31.9 inches to 32 inches in any given year, in Region 2, 20 out of 10 available fish are being taken annually. And out west, it's far less. It's closer to 5 out of 10. But as we all know, there's a lot of uncertainty in those estimates where we have the poor survey coverage. So I'm just really concerned about the persistence of the the socioeconomic and the fixed allocations kind of clouding our overall perspective on the long-term viability of the resource, both economically and biologically. And I look at the confidence intervals presented in a couple of the slides, and this new one that came out of last MSAB meeting, where we're starting to recognize that, okay, this isn't necessarily a short-term era of low productivity. Like, it's a 20-year period. It's the era that we're in, and there's no sign that that's ending anytime soon. That graph that Ian had up, or Alan put up, that showed kind of what the previous period of high productivity from the late 80s to the late 90s, was informing our MSC simulations. And everything looked like, oh well, long term it's eventually going to go back up to a 50, 60, 70 million pound TCUY. And that green line that's highlighted is not nearly as optimistic, and that makes me feel like we have a strong positive bias that's being informed by where we want the fishery to be based on how it was when the IFQ program started. And I recognize that our management is really struggling across state and federal to adapt to a TCUY in the 30 million pound range. So I'm gonna spare you guys from equity and fairness arguments. I think everyone here knows that we are relying and banking fish in west of 3A to help support the socioeconomic considerations and the communities in the east. And I've kind of softened my position on that, recognizing the difficulty that you guys have. But I just really appreciate the opportunity to comment, and thanks for getting me on there, Dr. Wilson. Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Mr. Elwood. Commissioner Alverson.
Garrett, do you have a recommendation for us for Region 3 and Region 2 to go up or down, sideways?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've gotten so far away from biological distribution and be as kind of like a basis for the area TCUY recommendations. I kind of came to the meeting feeling like I don't really want to make a recommendation on that. I mean, we're managing it kind of as like, Alaska, Canada, and then 2A. I look at biological distribution and see that, we have about 85%, 86% of the coastwide stock in Alaska, and we're harvesting 10% less than that. And it has huge ramifications across, for all the users and the stakeholder groups. There's no real scientific way to kind of justify your arguments or recommendations there. I feel in 3B particular that our very low fishing intensity there is proven to be a long-term beneficial to stakeholders there. We're having consistent robust harvests, but purely just from the fishing intensity perspective, I am concerned about mortality estimates in Region 4, despite a slight survey uptick, and the uncertainty associated with kind of prolonged periods of fishing intensity, pretty close to double what the historical levels have been in Region 2.
Thanks, Garrett. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Not seeing any. Thanks. Anyone else, Dr. Wilson? That's all. Okay. I understand that Mr. Duncan has a clarification on the trawl electronic monitoring issue that Commissioner Davis raised. Mr. Duncan.
Hello, for the record, Doug Duncan with NOAA Fisheries. Through the chair, Commissioner Davis, just to provide a better answer to your question about coverage under the EM program. So when talking about the Gulf of Alaska and the pelagic trawl vessels eligible for it, I believe it is 51 out of 52 are participating in the trawl EM program. And within participants in the trawl EM program get 100% coverage. So everything that they retain everything, and then it is all accounted for shoreside. So there's only one catcher vessel that's currently not participating in that I believe is otherwise subject to the partial coverage category.
I really appreciate you making the effort to follow up, so thank you. And would just say, keep up the good work and make it happen in the non-pelagic trawl. Keep going. Thank you.
I think that's the intent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That brings us to the end of our scheduled items. Dr. Wilson, anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So just a reminder that Conference Board and PAB are running in parallel at this point in time, and the Commission will reconvene in plenary tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. in this room to hear both the Conference Board and PAB report recommendations. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So we are recessed for now. Thanks, everybody.